Hello and welcome to Task. Oh, excuse me. My God. Oh, hello and welcome to Take You to School, Dr. Tom Prichard. My God, I got Taskmaster on my mind.
Taskmaster on your mind?
Yeah, I got Taskmaster. I almost said Taskmaster Talk.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Well, now wait a minute. Wait a minute. Obviously, you've had a long week too.
Yeah.
And Kevin Sullivan, Kevin's a great friend of mine. I've known Kevin since first couple of years in the business. But wow, that's a Freudian slip if there ever was one.
I just got a message. It's funny because I got a message about 5 minutes ago, not about him, but about he was booking a promotion, and they were messaging me. The guy said he's not giving back the title.
He's not giving back
the title belt, and so Kevin, I guess, is kind of stuck in the middle. He wants the guy to return the belt. Just funny, but now he's on my mind because I was just thinking, like, this guy's keeping that belt. There's no way he's returning it to Kevin Sullivan.
Well, you gotta love wrestling, huh? And is this guy Canadian by any chance? Just curious. You don't have to say. Yeah, a little bit Canadian.
Yep.
Is he very much Canadian?
Oh yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, I think there's something to water up there. But anyway, I have a lot of Canadian.
Anyway, let me restart that. Hey,
there we go. Go ahead.
Hello and welcome to Taking You to School with Dr. Tom Prichard. I am your co-host, AP John Poz from the two-man power trip of wrestling. And of course, joining me is the 8-time Smoky Mountain Wrestling Tag Team Champion, one-time former WWE World Tag Team Champion, one of the greatest trainers ever in the history of the business, the Doctor of Desire himself, Tom Prichard. Dr. Tom, how are you doing today, sir?
John, I'm doing great today, but let me just say, with that intro, one of the greatest trainers in professional wrestling has to be a guy I love. I've known for a long, long time. It has to be the Taskmaster, Kevin Sullivan. A very, not only a knowledgeable man, but
I don't remember him training anybody.
Oh, well, he trained a few people in the art of life, if you will. And you can learn a lot of lessons from anybody, but Kevin was certainly one of those guys who didn't hesitate if you were going down the wrong path or the path he didn't want you to travel. He would bring you back. So it's a great night in Knoxville, Tennessee, as always. And Kevin Sullivan is on my mind for some reason, man. But big shout out to Kev if he ever watches or listens, just so you know.
Hey, me too. But speaking of great trainers, that's kind of what I wanted to talk to today. Some of the great trainers out there in pro wrestling. But before I get to that, did you see the CM Punk thing? We haven't talked about that in a while. Did you see the Punker?
I actually had the opportunity. I was in New Jersey, Newark, New Jersey, of all places to stay. And I got a chance to watch SmackDown, then turned over and watched AEW. And I've got to say this real quick, or not real quick, but I have to say this right now. I was impressed. I can see why you have fans of AEW. Let me try that again. Of AEW out there who really enjoy the product. But bringing CM Punk the way they did, just on a rumor, selling out the United Center in Chicago, I thought was amazing. Thought it was great. After 7 years, why is it that CM Punk elicited a response like that? Why is it that he was the guy that came out and everybody was talking about it that day, that week, that month, and then the very next day, and still talking about it, and talking about the next arrivals at AEW. At least they have a buzz, and at least there's something for people to talk about and get excited about. I thought it was tremendous. As I watched it, a couple of friends of mine were texting me back and forth too, saying, "What do you think? What do you think?" And I said, "Yeah, this is great." But it doesn't erase everything else. There's still some issues they need to take care of, but I'll give it to them. I thought this was a hell of a shot, hell of a home run. Bring out CM Punk. You had grown men crying in the audience. You had kids crying. You had people really emotional, really feeling this moment, and that's talent. How does that happen? Well, it can only happen with a guy who's over and somebody who has that charisma, has that it factor. And Punk's not a bodybuilder. He's not a exceptionally tall guy, big guy, but he has that one thing you can't teach, that one thing you can't put your finger on or duplicate the recipe. You have to make it your own. You have to be authentic, and you have to have something that people connect with and you communicate with. So I thought that was tremendous, man. I really did. I haven't watched AEW in a long time, but on this one, I have to give them credit for what they did. They brought it out, and they had people talking about it for a while. So I'm anxious to see what they're going to do. I'm anxious to see the influence, and I'm sure he's going to have a lot, the influence in the back with the rest of the guys and how that's going to work out. And I'm sure Punk has that flavor about him. And the guys in AEW grew up watching Punk, no doubt. So they understand his reputation. They understand his gravitas that he brings to the whole company. And people respect him. So great job. I thought it was fantastic. I really did.
One of those things where it's like, okay, I figure he's going to get a big pop, but I didn't think it was going to be that big. I mean, 20 minutes, they were going nuts, deafening. One of the loudest pops I've heard in a very, very long time. Pretty awesome moment for AEW.
I thought it was an awesome moment for wrestling, but AEW definitely. I thought it was an awesome moment for this time period, especially when nobody's really making waves or making an impact, I guess, as far as ratings go or as far as interest goes. And I was telling the class, JPWA, this week, I said, I used to go out and watch The Undertaker's entrance when he would come back after a layoff or WrestleMania, whatever it may be. And I remember going out in the crowd and watching WrestleMania 20 when The Undertaker faced Kane. And the crowd was deafening. The smoke in the garden was everywhere. And you could just feel the energy. And that's what Punk reminded me of, that it was those moments that made me fall in love with wrestling, not necessarily in WWE, but in wrestling. When you did something that was unpredictable and exciting, authentic, and made people go, whoa, how did that happen? And that's a lot of that's missing or has been missing for the longest time, in my opinion, because you don't have the same kind of people. You don't have the same kind of business it used to be. And life goes on. The culture changes. But this is what I mean when I say the basics and fundamentals never go out of style. CM Punk knew how to get over. And when he walked out, he was over. After 7 years, he was over because he understood the communication. He understood the connection. He understood how to be authentic. You can't teach someone that. They have to get it. And they can learn it along the way, I'm sure, by studying the greats and the people like a CM Punk who can come out and control the crowd and have them eating out of his hand. But there's not a whole lot like Punk left. And hopefully, again, I await to see what happens as far as his influence goes backstage, because the guys like him. Tony Khan obviously likes him, and the fans have been waiting for something like this to happen. So, again, great job.
With the Punker making that return, it's funny that they didn't announce it, but it still sold out the 16,000 people in the building. So just the thought of him returning, sold out that building. And again, the thought of him returning popped a pretty big rating for them on Friday night. It basically doubled the audience from the week before when he was actually on. So it did about 1,300 the week before, or excuse me, 1,300,000. And then the week before was only about 740,000 for the episode. So people were definitely hyped and pumped to see possibly Punk return. And boy, did he return in a big way.
Well, once again, the old school wrestling fans couldn't wait for, their favorites to come back to. And in this sense, Punk is of the old school in a sense, but he connects with the young audience as well as the older audience, because they still remember the feeling they got when they watched him perform. They remember the feeling they got when they heard him talk. And so it's great to have him back. It really, really is. And just on the rumor alone, they're a long way from what the Attitude Era used to be, no doubt about it, but you don't have the same freedom to do what you did in the Attitude Era. You can't say the same things Austin said, or Rock or Hunter or Sean. You can't have that on TV today because of the culture we live in. But Punk, I think, related to people, not only being straight edge, but everything he said was from his heart and it was authentic, and people knew it. So the other guys seem to be scripted or trying to remember words and reciting them instead of feeling them and letting it flow. And Punk, even when he came out, he says, I wasn't sure what to say. I had nothing planned. I wasn't sure how it was going to go. So here I am. And whatever comes out of my mouth comes out of my mouth. And I don't know Punk that well, but I know him enough to believe that part was true. As long as he came out and he said, look, I'm a little overwhelmed and I have nothing planned. I was just going to see how it went and go from there. And that was an honest statement. And when he sat down and explained that he couldn't get well in the place where he got sick, people knew what he was talking about. And they're paying attention. People are paying attention, I think. And I say this, the ones who read the websites and the ones who really watch both shows and are interested in wrestling and who are fans, they're paying attention to what's going on. And they've been waiting for something like this. So it's up to AEW and it's up to Punk and whoever else follows, whether it's Bray Wyatt or Daniel Bryan or Ric Flair, whoever it might be. It's up to those guys to help AEW make that change and turn the corner for other people to come on board and watch it. Because I'm still a wrestling fan. I am a wrestling fan through and through. And when he came out and I saw the reaction, you can't help but feel it if you really love this business. You just can't. If you don't feel anything, maybe you don't love this business. But I mean, because I enjoy seeing someone come out and just wreck the entire arena. What I mean by that is just have everybody so emotionally drained that you own them. And he did. He owned the arena that night. He came out and he could have done anything. And he was over no matter what. So I really enjoy seeing that. I enjoy feeling that energy, that power, that emotion. That's what wrestling was. And that's what I think wrestling should always be. It's got to be something where it moves people, it moves the fans who are watching on TV, but especially live. That is so cool when it's live like that. It's a great, great thing to see.
That emotional investment from the fans, for sure. The thing is with him, which I thought was funny back in the day that people didn't kind of remember, like, oh, Punk, a UFC guy, he lost there twice, and he's not that over anymore. I don't know. I disagree. I think those fans that were fans of him then still are fans with him now. They remembered that WB basically screwed him over. He surpassed Cena in every metric. He was beating him when they had pay-per-views. He was beating him by rates. When they were doing live shows, he was on one show, Cena was on the other. His shows were outdrawing Cena's. I mean, he outsold Cena in merch, the merch king. He was outselling him. So he thought he was, reaching that number one status. Then all of a sudden, not going to happen. And then Miz gets a main event at WrestleMania instead of him. Then Batista comes back a few years later when he thinks he's ascending to the main event, and Batista's going to get the main event. Not Daniel Bryan yet. He eventually will, but Batista's going to get that main event. Oh, you're going to feud with Triple H, the guy that beat you a few years ago when you were on the biggest run of your career, which made no sense. Of course, you lost to The Undertaker WrestleMania. Makes sense because Taker had the streak, but still, maybe he thought he should break the streak. Then he faces Lesnar. He loses to Lesnar. So you could see years and years of a little frustration. Like, damn, I thought I was the number one guy. I surpassed Cena, the guy that was on top for years. I should be the next guy. Vince didn't see it that way, or Triple H didn't like him. So, I think people forget that.
Yeah, I remember just a short snippet I saw, and I don't recall what DVD or program it was on, but it was Hunter who said, sometimes we give the guy the belt and say, hey, you're the number one guy, but you're not really the number one guy. We just kind of let you hold it for a little bit. And I thought, you know what, dude? I don't know that I would have said that, because some people that's going to hit right, but he doesn't
true
care.
Of him though. Isn't that
but
true?
it is.
Through most
Yeah.
of his career.
It's true.
He was never the guy. He was the guy he was the transitional champion guy.
But the point is he felt differently. And that's, look,
Yeah.
I have nothing against Hunter either. But it's the showbiz thing, the jealousy, the envy, the pettiness of it all. And if you couldn't see how over the guy was, and again, the famous line Punk says, I don't need to work with you. You need to work with me. And that might have pissed Hunter off too.
Yes.
But the truth hurts. It's like truth isn't always comfortable. In fact, it's a killer sometimes. And, when you get influence, I think for the most part, it's human nature to use it, not always for the good.
Yep.
If they only use that power for good, but it's not always that way. So, I think Punk was right on the money. I think Punk made a hell of an impact. He was speaking the truth, and if they want to get any other tidbits out of him or out of him, I'm sure they will, and I'm sure he'll throw some barbs back and forth, and it'll go back and forth because now they have somebody to fight with on the other station, somebody to make remarks about, and maybe they can bring things up. And either way, at least it's a little more competitive and healthy to make the other guys look to be better. Because quite honestly, there was not a whole lot in AEW. And I love Chris Jericho. I really do. I think Chris is a talented guy. I honest to God do. But he needed help. He can't do it on his own. Neither can MJF. And so they needed somebody. And thank God that Punk was there. And, of course, Colt Commander's there, too. We know, or some people know about the history with Colt and Punk. But, it's business. And if they can coexist and get along and make things work, more power to them. I mean, really, I'm glad to see wrestling at least getting a shot in the arm where people have something to talk about instead of just, hey, AEW did this and WWE did this rating. That doesn't really excite me. I want to hear what Punk has to say. I want to see what Punk's going to do. I want to see who they're going to match him up with and what's going to happen. I'm going to see how he reacts and how he affects the dressing room, the guys in the back. Are they going to listen to him? I think a lot of those kids would, because Punk knows how to sit down and tell them and knows what to tell them. And he knows how to make sure that he's going to stay over because he has that it factor. Whatever it is, he's got it. And not everybody may like him, but I'll tell you what, you'd be hard pressed to find anybody who didn't like him in the United Center a couple of weeks ago.
Very true. And it's funny with Triple H, he definitely remembers kind of everything, and or he'll remember that comment and that'll work against Punk, or obviously Punk doesn't give a damn, but if you think about it, he used to call Daniel Bryan a B+ player. And remember, he kept saying that? Mm-hmm. All because years ago, Meltzer in the dirt sheet, that was his nickname for Triple H. Not nickname, but that's what he would say. He goes, Rock is the A. He goes, Triple H is a nice B+ player. So the fact that he's saying that on TV and remembering that and saying that to Daniel Bryan is just like, okay, this guy doesn't forget what people say. He could say he's going to work with these guys and this and that. He holds a grudge. There's no doubt about it. For him to bring stuff like that up is crazy.
Yeah. And again, it is show business, and the people who excel in show business, you have to have an ego. They have to have an ego. You got to believe in yourself, and you got to believe there's nobody better than you. And Hunter does, and Hunter did. So while he can come across as a gentleman and sincere and caring, it only takes one time to show his true colors, if you will. But he's a businessman. He doesn't care about anybody else but himself. And that's really the attitude you have to have. And I've seen it through the years. The people who do that and become successful, I guess, I don't know. As I get older, I look at things a lot differently than we do in our youth, obviously. But, time does pass, and there is going to be somebody on your ass, and there's going to be somebody right behind you, trying to take what you have. And you can't stop time. You can't stop getting older. You can get in the gym every day, but I'll tell you, as great as Vince looks, as great as Hunter looks, as great as a lot of people look at that age, one day it really won't matter. In fact, it's great if you have those and you love living those days, working 18, 20 hours a day, sometimes more. That's fantastic because that's your life and that's the way we live it. But Hunter, I believe, is bound and determined to make sure his legacy is cemented. I think, especially with NXT and what he's done down there. He's done a great job, by the way. I really do think he has. But are there flaws? There's flaws in every system. There's flaws everywhere. And I think Hunter was wrong when he started knocking Punk. But there's the jealousy and envy.
Right.
Nobody can be better than Hunter because unless it's Shawn Michaels. And even then, the rivalry there was real. The rivalry there, the jealousy and envy was real. And I have, man, I have a few stories of that too, where I said, wait a minute, did this just happen on a backstage incident with Shawn and Hunter? And I thought, I don't know. I'm getting off into a rant that I don't know that I really want to touch because those are the kind of things that in life and the business really piss me off. Because if you're a straight up honest person in any business, I just don't think you can avoid the ones who aren't, because there's always somebody waiting to taking advantage, getting advantage any way they can. They do whatever it takes. Some people do have morals. Some people have a conscience, but a lot of people don't. And so Hunter was definitely out for Hunter. Nothing wrong with that. But, at the expense of your best friend, your only friend at that time, I thought, wow, okay, this is how it works. I get it, I understand it, but it still didn't stop me from going, yeah. You're straight edge, Hunter. Doesn't drink, didn't smoke, didn't do any of that stuff either. But you take this moral high ground, but yet you can't wait to connive and stab Shawn in the back. And I'll leave it at that. I can't share the story, but it was like, huh. So this is really the truth. You really are this instead of what you want people to believe you are. So I get it. I mean, he's going to make sure if you call me a B+ player, I'm going to make sure that your indie darling and your tatted up, drug-addled looking hero is really a B+ player, and I look the way I look, and he'll never look like me. Well, yeah, but you'll never get the pop he got. So
right
there you go.
Now, as far as Shawn Michaels goes, we know he's now a trainer down at NXT. Obviously, he trained some guys back in the day. Maybe he wasn't the one responsible for actually physically getting in there and training the likes of Daniel Bryan and Paul London, but he was there. It was his academy. Mm-hmm. Obviously, Rudy Boy Gonzalez, who we're going to probably talk about in a second, was definitely amongst great trainers that helped a lot of future wrestling stars. So who are some of the greatest trainers of all time? I mentioned Rudy Boy, and I think that's a great kind of talking point because you're on that list too.
Well, I tell you what, I got a call earlier. I was doing something earlier tonight, and another great trainer who I've really come to enjoy every time. I mean, from day one since I met this guy, it's been great. He's a lot of fun to talk to. He has the same ideas, same mindset that I do too, and that's Big Cat Curtis Hughes in Atlanta. Yeah, and he's trained some people. He helped Apollo out and. Heath Slater, yes, a lot of other people too. So, Moose, guys
Moose from
Moose,
Impact.
Yeah, Moose. So, I think the when you talk about the great trainers, and I mentioned George South a lot, but George has his way of doing things. We all have our way of doing things, and I preface it by saying you have your way, I have my way, but the right way and the only way does not exist. It's just an opinion. And George, I haven't witnessed his class, but I've witnessed some of his comments, and I've talked to him many, many times about it. He believes what he believes, and he's not going to break. He's not going to break rank on that. And different trainers have their own way. We all have our own way of reaching a student. Being a trainer, being a coach, doesn't mean we're just going to show you the moves. Doesn't mean we're just going to show you how to do a spot. There's a lot more to it than that, and especially in professional wrestling. It is more outside the ring than it is inside the ring. And as we just talked about Hunter, it doesn't matter how great you are, as evident with CM Punk. If somebody wants to cut your legs out from under you and they've got influence, chances are that's what's going to happen unless you learn how to play the game and make it work. And some people are unaware, as crazy as that might sound. Some people are unaware of what the real deal is and how you handle yourself backstage. Number one, they have to like you to book you. If they don't want to book you, if they don't like you, they're not going to book you. Or if they do book you, they'll beat you like a drum, and so you're no good to anybody. It's happened. I've witnessed and experienced it myself. But as a good coach, as a good trainer, not everybody's going to respond the same way. Not everybody's going to connect the same way. And not everybody's going to receive the information the same way. So what do? And that's, to me, as a coach, you try to figure out how to connect or how to communicate what you're trying to get across with everybody in the most acceptable way possible. And by acceptable, I mean, if somebody is over here having a hard time grasping what I'm saying, if they don't come to me, I'm going to go to them if they're messing up in the ring and they're not getting it. And I could see they're not getting it. I'm going to ask them what the problem is. And if they don't know, well, I'm going to tell them what I feel is going on. And I will give them a direction. Some people will do that. Some people won't. I used to not yell at all, but I yell. I yell these days. But I also tell people you can't take this personally, because this is my way of not only working and performing as a coach. I want you to understand, you'll pay more attention to me when I go off, and you'll pay more attention when I start talking these crazy scenarios or say these things that some people go, what in the hell? He's a flake. He's crazy. But yes, that's to get you thinking, though, what is he talking about? I want you to know, everybody who ever comes train with us, I want them to know this should be fun. Professional wrestling should be fun, but it should be full. It should be it should contain characters. It should contain authentic people, like a CM Punk, like a Matt Riddle. As crazy and flaky as Matt Riddle is, Matt is a smart guy, whether you want to know it or not, but he knows who he is and he knows what people think he is. So he's going to give it to him. I can remember so many times having one opinion of somebody that I didn't really know yet, and then getting to talk to them and seeing that they're completely the opposite. John Moxley never let anybody in on who he really was. And then there were little glimpses of who he was and what he came from and what he became and what he wanted to do. So that's part of being a coach, trying to not only decipher the people that you're training out and figure out what they're trying to accomplish, and for them to decipher you and figure out, oh, wait a minute, I can be a little looser here. I can be somebody other than just a straight-laced guy coming in and say, hey, I want to be a wrestler, and hey, how do I do this hold? It's not about the holds. It's not about the moves. You have to have a foundation, but it's about being someone special people want to pay money to come and see. You have to be different than your average bear. And again, I know I'm going off topic here, but that's what trainers, in my opinion, and coaches do. If you can't get the message this way, I'm going to give it to you another way. And if you can't get it then, I'll attempt it again, and until we need to sit down and say, what are you missing? What do you think you're really missing here? Are you getting my point? Are you understanding what we're trying to accomplish? And some do and some don't. Some say they do and never will. So anyway, I just want to mention Curtis Hughes right off the bat, because he did call me earlier, and I'm going to get back to him tomorrow, I think. But great trainer. Great trainer.
Hughes, definitely forgot. I had a little list going here. I forgot to put him on there. Definitely up there. Now, do you go by great trainers as far as the resume of guys they trained it who made it, or do you judge it by a different scale? Like, for instance, I'll throw out there like Stu Hart, and he's like, okay, geez, all of his kids, Brad and Jim Neidhart, obviously not his kid, but obviously son-in-law. I mean, he trained him. He trained eventually T.J. Wilson, eventually Harry Smith. I mean, the list goes on and on of all the freaking guys that he trained, all those Japanese guys that came through there, Hiroshi Hase and everything else. Like, do you go by resume? Would Stu Hart be up there?
Well, I think Stu would be up there, not necessarily just from the resume, because I think as you go along, the resume grows. And Stu, Stu comes from a different era. Back in that era, your job was to help the young guys come along, and Calgary was a learning ground, like Oregon was. Portland and Calgary were so close. That's where a lot of the young guys would go, early in their career. Junkyard Dog went up there early. Jake went up there early. A lot of guys. I think even Dr. D, David Schultz, went up there for a time.
Yep.
Just even if Stu didn't stretch any of these guys, just being around, talking, listening to him, bouncing ideas off him, listening to some of the stories that may trigger something in your head, and you go, oh, wow, wait a minute. Let me see how that can be incorporated into what I'm doing or what I want to do or how I want to come across on a promo or an interview. And I think Stu would definitely be up in that category, but most promoters back then, like an Eddie Graham or a Bill Watts and Vern Gagne, even a Paul Bosch, didn't have always the best ideas, but more so than not, he did. But he would say something, and it would just register, or it would float off your brain. And guys like that, like Stu Hart, had that old school feel for it, and they would key on somebody who was passionate about the business. Ernie Ladd was another guy who would sit down and talk to you and give you ideas, but also just sit down and talk to you and tell you stories. And the thing about wrestling is, if you don't care about the history and you don't want to hear some of these old timers talk and tell the stories, then once again, I would suggest maybe finding something else to do, because that's a big part of what this is. We're storytellers. We're supposed to be storytellers, and you have to listen to other storytellers to learn how it comes across and to listen to it so you can figure out how to tell a story as well. And are they all true? I don't know, because I wasn't there, but it sure sounds pretty damn good. And a lot of it has been handed down through the years. The story about Dr. Jared Graham going into the hospital, bringing his dead mother out, and having to be arrested and beat up by cops, all this stuff. Well, I wasn't there, but there's newspaper accounts of it and rumors and all this stuff. And of course, the story grows larger. It goes as it goes on and on. Yeah. But as a trainer, as a coach, for someone who loves the business and the history of the business, who wants to hear about who came before them and what maybe they did that you can do, modernize, update, or leave as is, or just walk past it and not even acknowledge it, is what the business is about. Learning from the past, learning who came before you, learning what they did, because originality is highly overrated. You want to be original, no doubt. But I'm sure somebody might have done it before you that you don't know anything about. Lord Lansdowne was Gorgeous George before Gorgeous George. And there's a lot of guys throughout history who have done things that nobody else knows about because somebody else made it famous and made it their own, and nobody bothered to take the time or energy to look it up and see who did it first. So, and that's why a lot of old school trainers are valuable. That's why Curtis Hughes is valuable, because he can tell you stuff. Curtis has a pretty cool disposition too, and I've seen the way he talks to his kids. So, and I've talked to him so many times. It's just he's got this way of connecting, and that's a great coach in my opinion. So, anyway, rounding back to Stu Hart. Stu could tell you stories. You could be at the Hart house for breakfast or lunch or whatever, get rid by Owen, have Brett. Jonathan Boyd told me one time he was booking in Calgary for Stu, and Bret Hart took his book. He had a book with all the matches and angles in it. And Bret would go and erase it. It was written in pencil, and Bret would just go and erase it. Everything. Yeah. He and Bret thought that was the funniest thing. Jonathan would go, that he was a bugger, I tell you. And I thought, yeah, but that was the kind of business it was back then. Now it's a little different, but you can learn. You can learn wherever you go, good and bad.
So Stu, obviously, if you think about Bret, Owen, then you throw in Jericho, Lance, Storm, obviously all the Harts I mentioned, Neidhart, Dynamite, Davey Boy, Abdul the Butcher, Junkyard Dog, Jake went through there at one point. I mean, there's so many guys. It's like literally ridiculous. I know Jesse the Body went through there at one point. It's just ridiculous of all the names and big time talent. So he might have the best resume. I know I jokingly said to TJ a few weeks ago, I said that you were the best trainer, and then I said, actually, Stu's better than Dr. Tom, just joking around.
Yeah,
and he said, Dr. Tom's the best current day. He goes, Stu may be the best of all time. Just as far as like the resume of guys. Obviously, you got The Rock and Kurt Angle, and Mark Henry, but I mean, he's got quite a few more.
But here's the thing, you can't. If you don't have the talent, you can't do anything no matter what. You can't make somebody who doesn't want to be great. Right. Kurt Angle wanted to be great. Rock was great. I was in the right place at the right time. Those guys had the drive. No matter where they were going to go, they were going to be great. It was in them. All I was the guy there who was able to get in the ring. And also, I suggested as a finisher for Rock, the shoulder breaker. Horrible finish. We did it a few times on the road, but then they came up with a rock bottom, which is a lot better. So, I mean, look, we all, not all of us, come up with the great ideas all the time. I'll tell you another real quick trainer / coach who doesn't get a lot of credit, or maybe does get a lot of credit. I don't know. But Michael P.S. Hayes is insane. No doubt about it. He is insane. but he's insane in the way that we need in professional wrestling. He loves the business. This is all he thinks about every single day. And even when he's on vacation, he's thinking about wrestling. And he came up with the Stone Cold Stunner. He came up with a lot of finishes. He came up with so many finishes and ideas and angles. That takes talent. It takes creativity. And he's a great coach. He's a great person who will, if you're stuck for an idea, give him about 15 to 20 minutes. He'll come up with something. I've seen it. I've seen him change an entire card, pay-per-view card. And the way he said it, the way he presented it, came across so much better than the card that was on the table. So, that's another thing. Just having confidence in yourself. And knowing what talent can do. You have to have great talent to be a great coach. It doesn't matter. I mean, I think Lance Storm is a tremendous coach. He's had a few people come out of his school.
Yeah, of course.
But I was fortunate enough to be around the time when WWE wanted to start developmental. And that's how it came. And whoever was coming into the talent pool in developmental, wanted to be there. That was a passion, and that was a culture back then. So, it changes obviously as years go by, but the basics and fundamentals never do. And the basics and fundamentals include having passion, having fire, having drive. And without that, doesn't matter how good your coaching is, doesn't matter how good they are. If they don't really want to push it and they don't really want to take the chance and are willing to be vulnerable at times and embarrass themselves and get yelled at or have a stern talking to, if that's going to crack them, then it's better to crack them early on, because this is a tough business. And anybody who coaches wrestling will tell you it can be tough coaching people, because not everybody has the same mindset you do. And you have to, the distance between a pat on the back and a kick in the ass is about that far. And you got to decide which one works. Do you encourage this guy? Come on. Or is he one of those guys who needs to be, say, come on, you idiot, get up, or kick him in the ass? I mean, some people need whatever it is they need to fire up. If you have potential, but you're lazy, I'm going to kick you in the ass a couple times before I say, look, it's up to you. If you want to do this, you've got to make the steps. But anyway, I just want to mention Michael while you're on that topic.
You're not just mentioning Michael P.S. Hayes because you buried the Freebird a few weeks ago, right?
Why, of course not. Michael wouldn't even listen to this show. I guarantee it.
Okay. All right. Just wanted to make sure, because somehow he heard something you said before on the show. So I was just making sure that it wasn't any chicanery going on.
If Michael Hayes wants to come and face me right now, I don't care. He knows where I live. He knows we have a ring set up. If you want to come on in, P.S. Michael and I have had a lot of fun together, by the way. So, yeah, he knows. He knows once it comes down to fighting, he knows which door we'll both leave through. So,
do you remember that awesome Pro Wrestling Magazine picture with him and Kevin Von Erich, or
Kerry Von Erich, the Malcolm Jack Daniels?
Kerry. Yeah, I was going to say, do you remember that?
Of course I do.
He's a big Jack guy, I could tell, Michael.
Well, Michael's a big Jack Daniels fan. He's also a Jägermeister fan. And
okay.
Well, I'm not a huge drinker by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah,
but I find that hard to believe too. But Michael and I happened to be in an establishment one night, and I'll just share this because we were talking about great trainers, by the way. But we were in a restaurant one night with some other acquaintance, and they started ordering the damn Jägermeister. Now, you ever had Jägermeister?
Of course, yeah. My buddy used to have that little tap. Remember that thing? Yeah. Yeah.
Well, anyway, so they started ordering shots, and I never was I couldn't do the Jack. I couldn't do the Jägermeister. Later on, I learned how. But after the fourth shot of Jägermeister, I had already eaten some food, and this wasn't good. It was Michael and his wife Lori at the time, and some other friends of ours. And after about the fourth shot, it got caught in my throat, and in the middle of this restaurant. Oh, it was bad. It was bad. I heaved, and as I got up, I heaved at our table. I was running to the bathroom and heaving at the same time and throwing up, and it's, oh my God, terrible, terrible. Michael didn't come in until about 2 minutes later, and he goes, "Are you all right?" Lori came in and told me, so I ought to go in there and check on you. I figured, all right, I'll check on you. You all right? Stuff hanging out of my mouth. But yeah, fine. Just leave me alone. All right, I'll be at the table. And I got back to the table. They had another shot for me.
Oh, wow.
That's Michael Hayes. Gotta love him.
Oh, yeah. Hey, the guy you trained, The Rock, has some pretty good tequila, Terramina tequila.
I have not tried the Terramina tequila.
Very, very good. Actually,
I've had.
Yeah.
Well, have you had do you do it with the salt and the
yep, make
lime?
A out of it. Yep. Yep, and the lime juice. Yep.
Oh God. Well, I've had bad experiences on that too. But I don't know if anything good can ever come from drinking a whole bottle of tequila by yourself.
No, definitely not. Definitely not. But back on track here.
Sorry. Yes, sir.
Talking about great trainers. You mentioned Michael P.S. Hayes. I said Stu Hart, of course. What about Hiro Matsuda, a guy like that, the Hulkster, and everybody else that he's trained?
Well, again, going back to that day and age, that culture, the object was to discourage people from getting in the business.
Right.
And Hiro was good at doing that. If that was a great trainer, okay, then he was pretty good. But the idea, when Hulk came in, instead of sitting him down and saying, okay, let's see what you got, they didn't want him around. And that, even back then, I don't think it made a whole lot of sense, even though they were trying to protect the business. And to his credit, Hulk came back after they broke his ankle.
Yep.
And he told him, I'm going to find out some way to get in this. You can either teach him or I'm going somewhere else. But that was kind of a crappy thing to do, I thought. I don't want to hurt anybody when I'm in the ring. That's not professional.
And you think Hulk ever turned out to be anything in the business?
He might have a chance. I mean, he might have. I see some potential there, but that's what I mean. Eddie Graham, especially, would have. I would think would look at a guy 6'6", whatever he was, and powerful, and had a great look to him, and figure out, hey, let's get him on our side and teach him the ropes and make it work. But Matsuda knew his stuff as far as wrestling, and it was a great conditioning trainer too, doing the sit-ups, the push-ups, the squats, and things like that. And that's great stuff for wrestling training, no doubt. But in my opinion, if you're going to do that, you do it on your time. I'm going to do wrestling drills that are going to blow you up. I'm going to do things that you're going to need to know. And taking a line from Nick Saban, we don't do it until we get it right. We do it until we can't get it wrong. And it should be second nature to you like that. And you'll find out if you've never done it and just watched it. You'll find out when you get in the ring, there is a method to it. There's timing to it. There's the little elements and intricacies that nobody even thinks about. Letting it breathe, moving this way as opposed to the left, and having your hand just move slightly, having your foot move slightly. The little things, the details that a lot of people don't think about are just as important, if I would say more so, than the squats and the sit-ups and the push-ups. Do those when you're away from class or before class, or do what you want before. But in those 4 hours we're teaching, it's going to be about wrestling. It's going to be about, yes, why are we doing this repetition drill? So it is muscle memory. It's something that you don't forget, that it comes naturally. As soon as somebody takes you over in a headlock, your hand should come immediately by the side of the face. It can't be on the mat like this. And I see this so many times, especially after telling you, immediately put your right hand by the side of the face. Even if you're not going to head scissor, even if there's no counter involved. Look as though you were in a match for real. You have to think, shoot, but work. And the trainers that get that will get that. Hiro Matsuda wanted to make sure everybody knew professional wrestling was real. It was a shoot.
Right.
By God, not just anybody could get into this. Well, okay, but at the same time, how many people did he run off that might have made money? I don't know. They had to have the drive. If they didn't have the drive like Hogan, then that was the difference between them and the Hulk. Because without that, it doesn't matter how big Hulk was. If he didn't have some talent, he wouldn't have made it. You have to have the talent too. Just because you're big doesn't guarantee you're going to be a star. Some guys did, but it sure didn't last very long. You have to understand. The 10,000 hour rule. They made an amendment to that a few years later saying, oh yeah, just because you do this 10,000 hours doesn't necessarily mean you're an expert. You also have to have some bit of talent to go along with it. Well, duh, no kidding. So it's the same thing in wrestling, man. You can do this. I've heard people say, I've been wrestling for 15 years. That's with no S here in Knoxville, by the way, 15 years. And, well, if you've been wrestling for 15 years, why are you wrestling in the same place for 15 years and you look like crap and you never really made an attempt to branch out? Well, because I like living around home and don't want to leave mom and the kids. Great. Then I know what you are. That's fine. It's not a problem. No worries. But then don't tell me how bad you want this and how bad you want to go to a company and actually make a living out of this, because you don't. You want to stay here with mom and the kids, or ma and the kids, as we say around these parts. But anyway, yeah, I'm getting off topic again. You got to reel me in.
Yes. Yeah, I got to reel you in. But he trained, obviously, speaking of Matsuda, Muda, Hogan, Luger, Scott Hall, Ron Simmons, Paul Orndorff. I mean, another who's who of guys from there.
Right.
Another guy, great trainer, the great Malenko. Malenko's another guy. But him and then a guy like Vern Gagne, are they both in that same camp, or they one of the guys not to make it? Vern Gagne obviously has a who's who of guys, Malenko too, that he trained. But are they both of that same old school? They didn't want the guys to make it?
Do you know any of the names that the great Malenko trained?
There was a bunch of guys besides Dean and Joe. He trained Sean Waltman, right? Trained a bunch of guys. Trying to think who else off the top of my head.
It's a guy. He's one of the devil's favorite demons. Who the guy would bounce at night and go train with Malenko during the day. And Glenn always said he was a great trainer, a great man.
Oh, of course, yeah, of course he trained Kane. Glenn.
Yeah. So, and Malenko, I only met him once at Paul Bosch's retirement, but I grew up watching him and Wahoo have these incredible matches. And he seemed like such a nice man, just in the 15 minutes I got to talk to him. But Glenn has always put him over, saying he was a great trainer. And Dean, Dean always hit me, always seemed to me like not only I know he knew his stuff, no doubt. He grew up in the family, he grew up knowing his stuff, but he also hit me as a great coach, as a great trainer. Even when we were doing stuff before TV and everybody was down at the ring. Pardon me, Dean had that approach, and I would have to say that was due to his dad, the great Malenko. And when you talk about Vern Gagne in the same breath, Vern was more the Matsuda type, who wanted to make sure these guys knew it was real and didn't want to have anybody disrespect the business. Okay. But he also did the squats and the push-ups and the climbing up the stairs and the wheelbarrow and stuff like that, which is great. It's great conditioning. But Vern had this opinion that you had to know how to protect yourself and be an amateur wrestler, and he came from that school. And I believe Malenko had more of the colorful showbiz side to him. He was a tremendous worker, and when he came to Houston, he took bumps that I haven't seen anybody else take. The closest would be Flair, and I don't know if Flair got the face bump from Malenko or not, but I've seen some stuff like that with other guys that might have been around Malenko or know about Malenko. So both great trainers, Vern and Malenko, but I would have to say you might have got more out of Malenko's training because you had Joel and you had Dean helping out, and they were young and they had passion for the business back then too. So if I would have had my pick back then, I would have gone to Malenko's school.
Nice. What about Eddie Sharkey? I feel like maybe he's forgotten, but obviously the Road Warriors are on his list. Rick Rude.
Mm-hmm.
Huge names.
Eddie, I think he ran a bar in Minnesota. Was it outside of Minneapolis or no?
Yeah. Grandma's or something? Yeah.
Grandma's, yeah. And that was pretty much, I think, apropos back then, or par for the course.
He's bringing in the bouncers.
Yeah. And then looking at him saying, "Ma, hey, kid, you pretty big. You know how to wrestle." Because that's where Ole found Joe coming down to Atlanta. I remember when Joe first came down to Atlanta, and he was wearing the biker jacket and the jean shorts or whatever. And the next week he had Hawk with him. So Eddie Sharkey knew how to pick out talent, and you didn't have to. He would show him a couple things, and then I believe, I don't know because I never met him, but I believe the whole thing came back to I'll show you what you need to know, but the rest is up to you, because he knew how Vern was, and Vern wasn't going to give anybody a free ride. But if you're a big guy, I think he knew he would see money in you, and they would send him to places like Portland or maybe Florida for a little bit and groom him, or even Louisiana, Bill Watts. And that's the way it was done back then. You would go to these different territories and learn how to work, learn how to cut a promo, and then you could call your coach, if Eddie Sharkey was your coach, and ask him for advice. And that's what we're doing now, man. I'm getting calls. I got a couple calls this weekend from people who are out and about in the East Tennessee area working these wonderful independent shots. And, it's not like it used to be by any stretch of the imagination, but that's the way you learn. You go out, you learn different characters, you learn their quirks and qualms, and figure out what kind of experience you can get there. So and Eddie Sharkey, I think, was very instrumental for a lot of those guys around Minnesota getting a big break.
He still looks like he's in great shape. I saw a picture of him not that long ago. Still look like he's in pretty good shape. Another guy I was thinking of, because you mentioned Rudy Boy earlier, Les Thatcher, of course, your buddy Les. Right. Dusty, of course, you got to mention Dusty as being, but Danny Cage, like, as far as a new age guy, he's been kind of killing it lately. A lot of his guys making it to WWE. Yeah,
and Danny comes from the amateur style, and he met Larry a long, long time ago. Larry Sharpe. He's told me the story.
And of course, Larry Sharpe, can't forget him.
No, yep. Monster Factory, and again, an old school guy, old school ways, old school trainer type. But Danny has a lot of that same methodology. There you go. Easy for you to say. Methodology and the ways of the old school. And a lot of people don't understand that thinking because they've never been around it, never experienced it, never saw it. But I truly believe if you have someone who knows what they're doing when they're coaching, when they're teaching, and all those guys you mentioned, Les Thatcher, Dusty Rhodes, and Danny Cage, and Rudy Boy, they have a foundation that they base their coaching on, and they understand without knowing how to do the simple stuff, the basics, from just walking in the ring, circling in the ring, and a lockup. What do you do from there? How do you get to where you need to be? How do you go from A to Z without going A, B, C, D? Because it's there along the way, something's not going to work, and you're going to have to learn how to improvise. So Danny understands that, and Danny learned that from Larry Sharpe, and he learned that from watching other people. And he learned that from going to camps, and he learned that from listening and opening his eyes. So yeah, he's done a hell of a job too. Les Thatcher, I got to tell you, I've learned a hell of a lot from Les over the years. I really, really have. And we go back and forth, and I play with him. I'll pick at him. I'll try to get a reaction out of him because he's so passionate about wrestling. He believes what he believes, and he'll back it up, and he'll have an example for you, and he'll prove you wrong just to prove you wrong. Dusty Rhodes, as a coach, as a mentor, as a trainer, he understood the key to the business is knowing how to tell stories and weave them in and out, whether it's a promo or a match. And all the trainers we've mentioned so far that I know personally have done that. You're going to try and talk them in to the building with a promo. You have to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. But once you get them in there, you have to perform. You have to have a match, and you have to have psychology behind the match. If you're doing just moves with no passion, no feeling, then it means nothing. But these guys from the old school, that's how they made their living every single week. There was a show every single week live, and you had your local TV, and this is where they learned platform and their outline for the business. And it worked for so many years until the world changed. But I will go on and say this. As much as things change, some things remain the same. And again, if you can't lock up, if you can't grab a simple headlock, if you can't move, if you can't walk in the ring and look like you know what you're doing, if you can't come to the ring looking like you know what you're doing, then people are going to know. Whether they know or whether people, the fans, realize what they're watching or not, there's something in your sensory perception, I guess. You'll say, that guy's not real. That guy's playing. That guy's pretending to be a wrestler. And I see that more and more today in a lot of the shows that I've been to, guys playing the part instead of being the part.
Yes.
And trainers, good trainers, in my opinion, great trainers, in my opinion, will express that to the class, express that to their students, and make it a point to tell them in ways that they can understand what wrestling is, what professional wrestling should be. And it should be entertaining. It should be fun. And if you're having fun and you really believe in it and you entertain people, that's the key. And that's the ultimate goal, I think.
I think that's a great stopping point for this week. Great stuff. As always, talking about trainers. I think we could do even another episode going even further, talking about even more of the great trainers in the history of wrestling. But let's talk about your book, A Pro Wrestling Curriculum, Advice, Suggestions, Stories Up the Aspiring Pro. Get to the next level. Dr. Tom, where can they get this awesome book?
First of all, let me tell you, Farmer Burns had a book too. But this is nothing like Farmer Burns' book.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're very welcome. This is a book of suggestions and a curriculum just to go by. But it is available. If you go to jpwrestlingacademy.com on the front page, all you have to do is click the little gimmick on the front page to order. It'll take you right where you need to be. Also on our page, you will find our schedule for our last class of 2021 happening. I believe it's October 3rd, 4th. I don't have it in front of me right now, but it'll be in October and it'll end December 10th. I do know that much, but get the book at jpwrestlingacademy.com and find out all about JP Wrestling Academy on our website.
And of course, you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at 2Man Power Trip. Check out the website, tmptempire.com. Follow Dr. Tom on Twitter at Dr. Tom Prichard. Also, you can go to Pro Wrestling Tees, prowrestlingtees.com, and visit the Dr. Tom store or visit the JPWA store. Dr. Tom, what else you got going
on? Well, I was going to watch the NWA Power Hour tonight. Or the NWA,
oh, yeah.
Yeah, but I'm not going to. So I have nothing else going on.
No shows coming up?
I have a camp coming up in Altoona, Pennsylvania. Have a show coming up in Altoona, Pennsylvania in 2 weeks. Once again, I don't have the date in front of me, but you can look on my Twitter. We are advertising it. It's from Mike Lettieri and Imagine Wrestling. Great bunch of guys there. I'm going in on a Friday night. I believe the show is Saturday. We're doing a 2-day seminar as well. And after that, I'm not sure where I'm at. I have to look in my book.
Nice. Good stuff. As always, Dr. Tom, thank you. And thank you, everybody out there, for listening. We'll see you right back here next week for a little Taking You to School with Dr. Tom.